So please know, in terms of the panel, I want you guys to listen to what is said here. There's going to be time for Q&A. If anyone has a question but doesn't necessarily want to raise their hand and ask it in front of everyone, that's cool, that's okay. We have an anonymous question box that's at the front table. Go up there, write your question, throw it in the box. I will read it and give the panel a time to respond. All right, so don't feel nervous or scared about anything. No subject is taboo or off limits. All right. So I'm going to start at the end. I'm going to start with Officer Ruga McCall from 103rd. Can you just give us, and you gave us a brief view of your organization, but talk about what your typical day is like. What kind of cases might you handle? You know, how do you do this work?
Good afternoon, everybody. Glad that everybody's here. Officer Mungamako, I work for the 103rd Precinct Domestic Violence Unit. It's not exactly patrol, but it is an investigative unit that deals with anything from like a domestic incident, including a verbal dispute, and unfortunately, even sometimes homicides. What we do on a daily basis is a report will be brought into our office. And after it's brought to our office, we'll determine if it needs a follow-up, depending on the severity of the report. If it's a verbal dispute and they have a chronic history between the two parties, we'll do a follow-up investigation that consists of usually a phone call and, if needed, a home visit or other services like she's not here right now, but Victoria, she is our Safe Horizon. There she is. She's our Safe Horizon liaison who will provide like services for victims, shelter or drug and alcohol abuse assistance. Also, we will do home visits, which is very important to our important to our agenda because we follow up, check if the victims are okay, to make sure that if they're getting the proper services, and if they are, we do a follow-up, just do a wellness check to see how they're doing, basically. But other than that, it's like anything else, we investigate all crimes generally, but focus more on domestic violence and domestic incidents, especially children, elderly. Those are our other points of interest because those are the ones that are being neglected. That's why we do follow-ups on children and on elderly and chronic victims.
Thank you. Okay, tell us how you do this work.
Sure. So there's no day-to-day look to the work at AVP, largely because we're a crisis organization, so the bulk of our work comes from supporting our 24-hour hotline. So if you call our hotline from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., the folks that you'll be speaking to will be counselors and advocates who are paid employees, as opposed to our expansive list of volunteers that support our hotline after hours. The majority of our work comes in the form right now of folks who are seeking asylum, LGBTQ folks, trans women of color who are down at the border seeking asylum and who need support. We provide both legal support, counseling support for folks who are in need. It looks a lot like us figuring out how to actively engage in what we call little a advocacy as opposed to big A advocacy. Big A advocacy is when we're working on systemic issues via legislative and policy work in our community organizing department, and little a advocacy looks like direct service where we're coming in contact with survivors every single day, as well as finding new ways to incorporate queer and trans issues into mainstream organizations. So we do a lot of trainings, we speak in a lot of different spaces similar to this one, to allow folks to understand that queer folks are equally as experiencing domestic violence, intimate partner, and sexual violence, if not at elevated rates, with particular focus on trans women of color, who right now we're sitting at 20 trans women of color who've been murdered this year alone, and it's an epidemic. And so that's really what we're focusing on and how we try to engage in communities, mainstream communities, and also within our own community to bring light to this issue.
Johnny, how do you do this work? It's interesting that you had mentioned the little A advocacy and big A advocacy. Talk to us about your work.
It's so
it's actually a great segue into kind of like the work that I do, because it incorporates both. So on the one hand, I have, I'm not gonna coin your word, but the big advocacy, right? So I'm figuring out what policy needs to be enacted in order for the systems that survivors are going to for assistance. What policies need to be implemented so that those processes are a little smoother, right? So that's the big A, right? And then the little A is when we have members come into the office and they're like, hey, I want to go back to school. I want to have economic agency. I want to create independence for myself. And I have to sit down and say, let's pull up the smart sheet. Let's be specific. Let's be measurable. Let's be objective. And really breaking that down. So my day-to-day kind of, I'm juggling two balls at once. Yeah. So that's really interesting. And then also, of course, like the back end stuff. So making sure that the over 600 members that we're servicing, are getting the updates, are getting the opportunities that are out there for survivors of domestic violence, and that they're aware, that they're going to city council meetings, and that they're aware about the changes happening, and that they're aware about what the mayor's office is doing and all the great things that's going on there. They're aware of like these great other organizations and what the NYPD is doing, like keeping them informed and up to date. So that's kind of, well, like three balls that I'm like juggling at once. So yes. Thank you.
Sarah?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, the Alliance is sort of an all-encompassing sexual violence organization, and what we do is a lot of our cases come through our helpline as well. We're not a 24-hour helpline, it's a 9-to-5 helpline, and it's mostly crisis intervention. So we do short-term counseling where we're sort of like a stopgap measure almost, because a lot of the other organizations that provide ongoing counseling actually have really long wait lists. So we're trying to plug the gap a little bit. And so somebody will come in either through our helpline, or often disclosures are made at trainings such as these, because we do a lot of trainings as well. We do trainings at college campuses, we do trainings for medical professionals, we do trainings for other community-based organizations. So when someone comes to us saying that they are in a relationship or they've been assaulted, and there's a trauma history, then we will bring them in for counseling if that's what they're looking for. But also we do accompaniment if they want to file a case report, if they want to get a medical exam, if they want to go to the hospital and get checked out. Those are kinds of things that our counselors will help them navigate. If they've already filed a report and they want to follow up and they're not hearing back, that's something we can do, because we do have a close relationship with the district attorney's office, with the NYPD, as well as other programs. So that's sort of like, that's sort of like the smaller, the more direct nitty gritty of it. On a larger scale, we're really trying to work with bigger groups like DCJ or Department of Health, the criminal justice system, and bring about policy and legislative changes around these issues based on what we are seeing in the field and what our partner organizations are telling us. And so really elevating what's going on in the field and bringing it to the attention of people that are decision makers.
Hi everybody. So me and my team focus on outreach. I would say every day looks different, like a lot of you. So I think one day I might be out at a community center facilitating a karaoke love song workshop to discuss healthy versus, yeah, we could do it here. Healthy versus unhealthy relationship behaviors in the lyrics of songs, like that's one way to approach it. It might be organizing an arts and craft material with youth to explore boundaries and sort of like concepts around consent. It might be, walking over the Brooklyn Bridge during Sexual Assault Awareness Month to show support and raise awareness around victim blaming behaviors and sexual assault. It could be something like more visible and high profile. It could be something with a small community partner who's expressed an interest or has brought a community issue, maybe a barrier in connecting to services or something that they want to work out with us. And so we, I would say in a meta way, our goals are to raise awareness about the issues of gender-based violence and how they reach communities across the city, to build capacity of community members to better recognize and respond and support each other, and then know about the services so they can connect people to them, whether it's through us or any of these partners that we work with according to their sort of preferences and needs. And then some days I might just be at my desk all day, you know, on phone calls, planning and strategizing what our next moves are going to be when we're out in community. So every day is different.
Okay, Lieutenant Bailey, talk to us about how, I know you do so much here at York College, but in this context, talk to us about how you support.
So basically, because we are a college campus and we're public safety on a college campus, it's a little bit different. Each day is different. No day is the same, just like the mayor's office. It could range from a day of checking emails to having several incidents at one time. So basically, we get situations where it could be staff or students, they're involved in a situation, and let's say that they have an order of protection. One of the things that we ask for is a copy of that order of protection, and we generate a picture of the individual. That information stays within our officers, and that individual is not allowed on campus. Of course, if that individual comes on campus, that is an automatic arrest. And our peace officers, because we have peace officers and civilians, they have the authority to arrest that individual. So sometimes something doesn't happen on campus, but someone will come to us and report that something happened at home, or, you know, while they were walking down the street, and it's not our jurisdiction. Do we help them? Of course we do. So we do referrals with Safe Horizon, with various precincts, our own precinct, the 103rd, and we try to get them as much help as they need. We do referrals for counseling, the Women's Center, you name it, we work with student development. If it's a student and they need to have their class changed for whatever reason, we work with student development. So that's basically that's our role here on campus.
Wonderful, thank you. So I think that it's really important for us to define a couple of terms. I think we all know what stuff is because we do this work, but I'm not sure that everybody in the audience does. So I'm going to ask for a couple of definitions just so we can all be on the same page, and anyone can take this, okay? So the first thing I may ask you for this one, what is gender-based violence?
Okay, that's actually a really good question. So our office recently rebranded and expanded the scope of our mission. So before September of last year, we were OCDV, the Office to Combat Domestic Violence, which itself sounds really violent. But at the time, we are set in through our family justice centers, we were providing, or through our partners, I should say, at the family justice centers, we were serving 3 types of victims and survivors. Intimate partner violence, so there had to be some sort of intimate relationship there, however that's defined, one date, married, whatever. Elder abuse, so abuse of a person 60 or over, and sex trafficking. After September of last year, we expanded because we sort of were at a point in the city where we were recognizing that people tend to, or it's possible for people to experience violence on a spectrum, right? If you are a victim of sex trafficking, the person who is trafficking you might be your intimate partner. That might be how the trafficking got started, right? So you are a victim of intimate partner violence and sex trafficking. But guess what? It could also be based on just your gender or your gender identity or your sexual orientation. That's all encompassed in gender-based violence. Also, stalking and sexual assault. There may not be an intimate relationship there prior to the assault. So we wanted to make sure that our umbrella of services and the work that we do captured the people who identified as that classification of victim as well, right? Also stalking. Stalking is becoming a bigger word for people, as it should. Stalking is very important because it's often gender-based. And it's one of the most reported behaviors precluding a violent incident in an intimate relationship. So stalking is important. And we've also expanded to other forms of trafficking and also family violence, because you can be trafficked for the purposes of labor, right? But it could also be based on your gender. So you could be a domestic worker or some sort of skilled worker. Family violence is also very often based in gender. And I do want to say that this goes for people who identify as masculine or male. I think it's important when we say gender, we want to make sure that we're including everyone who identifies as a victim or survivor. Unhealthy relationship habits or using abuse in a relationship is not limited, I think, to like the traditional relationship view of like a cisgender man and a cisgender woman. It happens in any type of relationship. At our Family Justice Centers, about 10% of the clients we see identify as male. I do feel like if we were more supportive and sort of more open with how we view these issues, that more people of all kinds of identities and orientations would be coming in, right? So I say that specifically because sometimes we get stuck when we talk about domestic violence. We often say he when we say the abuser and she when we say the victim, and we're really trying to sort of break down those stereotypes. And I think that's another reason why we've expanded to gender-based violence. And then intimate partner violence, you'll hear IPV, is really just one classification. So you can consider gender-based violence as like a whole umbrella term, and then there's all these different categories underneath that.
Thank you. That's really good. A good definition for all of us to go for. The next definition I want to, I think, Kay, I'm going to ask you for this one. All right. So you mentioned it when you were introducing yourself. But please, for the room, can you go through all of the letters? LGBTQIA plus, all of that. Can you just go through that so everybody is on the same page?
Absolutely. So when we're talking about LGBTQ communities, sometimes you'll just hear folks say queer community or the LGBT community, but it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, and then when you see the plus sign, what the plus denotes is a lot of the letters or identities that just don't happen to fit or are not mainstream. So if we were talking about this community 10 years ago, we may have only been saying LGB, right? LGBT at the very most, right? A long time ago, it really was only the gay community or the gay and lesbian community, and we just use the plus to denote that the community is ever expanding, and that makes no one's identity any more or less valid, just that we need to do a better job of incorporating all of that into our vocabulary.
Thank you.
Yes.
The last one, only because you brought it up, I want to define is cisgender. What does that mean? Anyone can take that.
I can do that. I can do the transgender and the cisgender. So when we talk about cisgender folks, always non-conforming, right? We're so cute. When we're talking about cisgender, cis is a Latin prefix term. It means on the same side of, right? So when we say cisgender, we're talking about folks whose current gender identity, the way that you look and present today, is along the same pathway as the sex you were assigned at birth, right? So when babies are born, doctors make a decision about if this is a baby girl or a baby boy, right? And based off of that, we have this trajectory. Little girls like to wear pink and do ballet and all that cute stuff or whatever. That would be someone who, if when they were born on their birth certificate, there's a gender marker. It's an F or an M, right? If who you are today is the same as reflected on that birth certificate, if you still feel intimately tied to that identity, you would be cisgender. If you do not, in any way, shape, or form, feel tied to that gender, you would be considered transgender. Like, it's an umbrella term, and underneath that umbrella are many different identities, like non-binary and non-conforming.
Thank you, because I think, like I said, I think we know that, but I'm not sure that everyone else does.
I didn't know that.
Okay. Right, okay, so y'all acting like I'm crazy, and y'all know everything. I know y'all didn't know that.
Crazy. I learned something.
And what's the question? Probably most of these people, and definitely all of these organizations, have been on campus to do trainings for us before. So some of you have seen some very familiar faces up here. All right, so I'm going to ask a couple of questions. I'm going to let the audience do that, but just to warm us all up. And I think it was mentioned during the introduction. I want to talk specifically, because we have young people here, about the role that technology plays in all of this work, in gender-based violence, domestic violence, IPV abuse. We talked a little bit about stalking, but, and this is for anyone to take, what role does technology play? Because we've all got these, right? We've all got these smartphones. Many of us are tied to it in a way that's slightly unnatural, and I'm going to put myself in it as well. So talk about that as it relates to this subject and this one. Anyone?
can be very useful, and it can also be very hurtful in domestic violence situations. Useful, obviously, for the aid of 911, police assistance, emergency, obviously emergency assistance. It could also be very hurtful. It's also, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, the guidelines of penal law when it comes to using cell phones and committing crimes towards another person, especially in domestic violence situations. It is considered a domestic violence category. If it's called aggravated harassment. Has anybody heard of that?
Yes.
Okay. Aggravated harassment, there's two ways of doing it. One can be where, I'll just give you an example. If I were to text a partner, or obviously, it doesn't matter if it's intimate, doesn't matter if it's a family member, if it's a domestic situation, and I were to threaten them with physical harm, that is considered aggravated harassment and misdemeanor, which is an arrestable offense. And then there's an aggravated harassment violation, which is, I'm just texting you and annoying you. Like, I guess you like, I hate you, or, I hope you die, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm causing that death, you know what I'm saying? Or any type of injury, I'm not inflicting it. So that's where it goes with the whole technology, how it could be a prominent, with that con. Also social media, a lot of people, they use that to, exploit, victims of domestic violence and, shame them. And a lot of other horrible things, but that's in regards to technology, in regards to domestic violence, that's what basically cell phone.
I just want to quickly mention training that I did at Brooklyn Friends School where we kind of reenacted this, right? So I had the students write maybe 10-word sentence, right? No interruption. Then I had them write the sentence again, and every maybe 30 seconds, I say stop and start again. And every time I say stop and start again, that's supposed to be representative of receiving a text message. And as we continue with the exercise, I do it from 30 seconds to 2 seconds. And what I'm trying to convey is that when you have someone, right, that is constantly texting you, A, you become less productive, right? And B, not only that's a form of like coercion in a way, right? Like a person is coercing you to respond to them immediately. There's something wrong there, right? And we know that oftentimes with violence, it's perpetuating this power dynamic that's there, right? And through, like you were saying, social media and texting, oftentimes these boundaries are being violated.
Yes.
So that's something that we need to discuss a little more and have open dialogue about really reinforcing our boundaries as society begins to evolve towards technology and AI and these other things. We need to be bringing this to the conversation as well. Thank you.
Yes.
Just want to add something to this. I also think of technology as I do a lot of work with young adults and children, and I also see technology as almost sort of like a gateway drug because it is useful, but at the same time it opens doors to lots of other things. So we grow up hearing from our parents, don't talk to strangers, right? But at the same time, children are allowed to play games with strangers or go on dating sites and start just a lot of access to individuals that you don't know or trust. And I feel like that a lot of individuals have been drawn in by potential traffickers or abusers in those situations when there's very minimal control over that situation, right? So just to be careful of who you interact with over technology, using technology, I think is important as well. If you do an Instagram account, for example, a comment of a friend could lead you to someone you don't know, despite the privacy. Just be mindful.
So my, you guys know I have kids. I have a daughter. She's 12. She's my child, right? But so my daughter has friends, and the friend was dating as much as you can at 12 this boy. Everything was wonderful. It was all good. During the course of that relationship, he sent her a video of his junk. Okay? And at first, it was fine, right? But of course, as the weeks went on, said relationship ended, and ended badly. He called her a hot and a hoe and all types of things that you probably shouldn't say to somebody who has a picture of your junk. So So what does she do? She gets understandably angry and posts the video on Snapchat. Oh, Lord. Yes. At which point my daughter saw it and was, of course, rather appalled. As she should be, because she should not be looking at pictures of other people's stuff, right? Unfortunately, especially with young people, this happens a lot. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of times that's how people interact with this type of thing. And that is a form, I think, to your point, Johnny, that is a form of abuse. How does that occur? I know you spoke about this, James, and how that occurs within the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, the idea that any one person would share a private image is what we consider to be sexual violence. Because just because I consent to sharing a picture with one person doesn't mean I consent for that person to share it with a larger group of people or any one person outside of them. And so I'm going to say something like this happens really, really often. Right? I don't think that the act of sending an image to a person is inherently wrong, right? Because I recognize I have younger siblings too. Like, I know this is what they're doing. Even I don't want to see it, but I know this is what they're doing, and there's a lot that we can't control. But we can do a safety plan with young people around the idea of what happens after you share that picture is not yours anymore. What happens if that picture gets into the hands of someone else, or worse, it goes to the hands of an administrator, right? And then there are like next level consequences outside of like maybe your parents wanting to murder you. But next level consequences of what it means to share someone else's picture, particularly if that person is underage.
That's actually what I wanted to mention, is that I don't know if people are aware of this, but a law was recently passed. Has anyone heard of non-consensual pornography? Otherwise known as revenge porn is like the dirty word for it. So there are websites out there on the dark web and on the regular web, on the mainstream web, where exes or abusive partners will post videos, pictures that were shared with them or made with them in the context of this, private, loving relationship. And then when things blow up, their way of either exerting control, power, or abusing them is to put their information up on these websites, and it can really affect people's lives, right? You can imagine when you go to apply for a job and they Google your name, these things are coming up, and there's also something called doxing, where they will share your video and your picture and then list information about you, true or untrue. So they might say, this is Tisa, she works at the mayor's office, she molests children, or this is when she gets out, she has a rape fantasy, you should go find her, right? And so they're really putting people at risk in multiple ways. So I do want to say, like, it is against the law. Revenge porn or non-consensual pornography is against the law. And it's very difficult to get those images removed, to sort of reclaim your sense of security after that has happened. So in our workshops, we really tell you, like, just don't sex, because you cannot control what happens. And the other thing I want to say about technology is that be really mindful of your settings, your passwords, okay? I've had youth who have said, like, well, if my partner doesn't give me the password to their phone, they don't love me, right? They're hiding something. But also giving that kind of control is very dangerous. Because of this, we have a program at our Family Justice Centers. It rotates around the Family Justice Centers. So once a month at every Family Justice Center, you can come in, get your phone plugged into, it's a program by Cornell Tech, and it was done with survivors who have experienced technological abuse. You can plug your phone in with Cornell Tech and they will scan your phone for malware. Because what if you leave your phone there, your partner knows your password, they think you're cheating on you, and they can go in and install, there's all sorts of dirty apps and malware that can be installed on your cell phone. It will, for example, tell your location to your partner. It will turn your phone into a microphone so they can listen in on your conversations when you don't know. It could send you text messages or calls and it looks like your mother's calling, but it's actually your partner. And let's say you put your cell phone on the order of protection. They're not supposed to contact you via your order, because of this order of protection. They have apps now where they can text you and then 10 minutes later the text disappears. So when you go to court and say, my partner is violating this order of protection, they're texting you and you look crazy because there's nothing there. Right? And a lot of these malware apps are set up in a way where every time you wipe your phone and turn it back on, they self-reinstall. So sometimes people go in, they get their phone checked, and they find out, oh, nothing's there, and that's a relief. right? So even finding out nothing's there is good, but it's also good to get checked if you suspect that's happening, because what they'll also do is educate you about your privacy settings. Every time you go on Facebook or Instagram, is it telling people where your location is? It'll tell you if there are multiple sign-ins to your social media accounts, you might not know. That in addition to the ways that social media perpetuates unhealthy relationship habits, and that's the last thing I'll say, is like how many of us have seen memes, for example, about like Harley Quinn and the Joker's relationship, talking about like that's relationship goals, or like if my man's not FaceTiming me every hour, then he doesn't love me. Those are really dangerous behaviors to perpetuate, and so I also just want to put that out there too, because I think it helps when all of us actually write a comment and say like that is actually really unhealthy. You know, that means that person doesn't trust you, or that person is insecure. So I also just want to throw that out there as well, because technology is really playing a big role these days in abuse and how it plays out.
Do you have anyone in here who's under 18? Oh, okay, a lot of you. We mentioned, very briefly, I'm not sure who mentioned it, for people who are minors. And thank you for mentioning that law, because that is something that's recent. But there's a lot of consequences for, if you are under 18, it's considered child porn, which is bad, which is not something that we should do. So even as I tell my kids, listen, and I know I shouldn't say it, Kay, but I say, don't text.
Yeah.
Like, just don't do it. And he's like, oh, but what if my face is not enough? Don't sex. My son is quite cheeky. But talk to me.
Can I say something? So I think it's so interesting, right? Because I firmly believe young people, y'all are doing whatever it is you want to do. We just don't know about it. I would just encourage you all to do it safely, right? Just because your face isn't in it doesn't mean that there's not a way for someone to find out that it's your body, right? Just be safe about the fact that you're doing it. Like, and to the point about doxing, right? If any of y'all are on Twitter, you ever seen someone post a picture and someone says, Twitter, do your thing, and then you find everything about that person, just imagine if that person is you, right? Think about the kinds of things that someone could find, and always turn your location off. If you're gonna do the things you do, just turn your location off.
And if you need help with figuring out how to do that, we're here for you. Because a lot of times, a lot of the apps like Snapchat or Twitter, they automatically have that setting in there. Okay? So we're going to shift the discussion really briefly. And a lot of times, I would hazard to say anyone can find themselves in a bad situation. There's no judgment, but it happens. Okay? And once that happens, there's a lot that can go on. A lot of times when I talk to people about this work, they say, well, I don't understand why this person's in this situation. Why don't they just leave? And if they're staying, I guess this is what they want. It's their fault, right? So can we talk a little bit about victim blaming and perhaps what might be a little more productive than taking that back? Anyone?
And a lot of things I'm going to say are probably going to be redundant, but it's just factual, right? So victim blaming is another way to shift the power structure in a dynamic, right? Because it goes from I did something to you to you're the reason why this is happening, right? And what victim blaming does is it further decreases the amount of self-worth, self-security, self-certainty that an individual has after experiencing intimate partner violence or domestic violence or sexual violence or even verbal violence, which is another thing that like people don't often talk about. It's like, well, I don't have any cuts or bruises, or I haven't been slapped. But if you've been verbally accosted multiple times and you're feeling as though you're in a tidal wave of interactions with a person, that is abusive. That is conditioning to really like break down your sense of self. Like there's something really wrong there. And I think another thing that needs to be spoken about is like boundaries and privacy. Like that's really key in victim blaming. Like your boundaries are like getting slowly and slowly like pushed down until you're just constantly raw. Like, and what does that do to a person? What does that do to like the person's, again, feelings of self, feelings of security within yourself? I'm gonna, before I
That's
go.
fine. But that's good. Can we talk a little bit about, more about that? You talked about boundaries and privacy, and Tisa, you mentioned that some people feel like, well, you know, we're together, we're one, there are no boundaries. And he's got my passwords, and I've got his passwords, and no one has any secrets, because that's what relationships are. Can we talk a little bit about
It's a
that?
no. No.
Can you expound on the no?
Sure, no problem at all. So, we definitely live in a world now where like we're so interconnected and everything's all like interpersonal, intercommunication, that it feels like there are no boundaries. But I think we need to redevelop what boundaries are. I'm a person, I am an individual, you are an individual, you are an individual. You have your own self of identity that needs to be respected, uplifted, and you know, sustained. And I have that as well. Like that,
Even if we are together.
even if we're together, we are not sharing one body. We are not sharing one breath. We are two individuals that need to be respected in a relationship. It is a partnership. Anything with a ship is a bird, right? You have to actively work to uplift the healthiness of that ship. Whether or not it's a friendship, a family, well, that's not a ship, but whether or not it's a family relationship, like these things are, you know, these things need to be upheld. You're an individual. Like, you cannot expect for someone, and everyone has their own lives, right? Like, you cannot expect for someone to text you 5 minutes of every hour. That is unhealthy. Those are not clear boundaries. For you to constantly say, what are you doing? What are you
No,
this is not the, it's not the Verizon commercial, and it's not the Geico commercial. That's not healthy. That's not okay. People need to respect that people are living their own lives, and that because in that moment you feel insecure that you don't have the power or the authority or the information, and that makes you feel insecure. You need to address that instead of trying to put that dynamic into the relationship by saying, well, I don't know where you are, so I feel uncomfortable, so therefore I need to exert a power, I need to exert some type of coercion, I need to exert some type of control to make sure that I'm maintaining the way I want things to be. You need to really check yourself, like, make sure that you're not perpetuating those type of unhealthy shifts. So yourself.
Please.
I'd like to add something to the victim blaming thing. I think, again, I think this is maybe redundant, but it is obviously a very complex situation, right? And I just want, if you have a friend who's in a difficult relationship, think back and you think, you wonder why they're not leaving. Think back to your first crush or your first love. And think about the number of people, if you told a friend, it's like, oh, they're so cute, and the other person, no, they're not. Just remember that someone else's perspective might be very different than yours, and obviously with the first love, it's sort of a little bit, or first relationship, you don't have the experience, you don't know what to expect sometimes, and you may even recognize that that person's not good for you, but you hope that they will change. Or you wish that things will be different. Or you love them just so much that you feel that you can change them. So it's very complicated. And so if we begin to victim blame, then that person who's your friend may not seek you out if they feel that you're not supportive of that relationship, right? So just keeping it sort of neutral and open without making them, without pulling them down further, just letting yourself be open so that they can come reach out to you as needed, that would be helpful.
Thank you. Yes.
I also just want to add that so one thing that we know when we look at the statistics is that the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when the victim has left, right? Because you are removing the abusive partner's ability to exert their power and control, and so they're going to kick it up a notch, right? They escalate their behavior. Most victims are told, if you leave, I will kill you, or I will threaten your family, or right? So I think that it's important to understand, like, it's not just an easy decision, like, oh, I'm gonna go, this doesn't work for me. And keep in mind, we live in New York, where it's extremely expensive, where a lot of people come here and might be dissociated from their family networks because they came from another country, another state. Maybe their family doesn't know that they identify as LGBTQ and their partner is threatening to out them, or their family has alienated them, or whatever. And so I think we take it for granted that if someone makes a plan to leave, right? This is why they say it takes the victim an average of 7 attempts to successfully leave a relationship when they've decided to do that. Because how are you gonna support yourself financially? That might have been something your partner was controlling, right? Your paycheck. Maybe they weren't letting you go to school, letting you go to work. You have no money of your own. You have no work experience to get a job. Where are you gonna live? Housing is very tight in New York City. Maybe all the people in your life got so disgusted with your relationship that they, rescinded their support and you got nowhere to stay. So leaving, what if you're an undocumented immigrant or documented and your partner as a form of abuse has threatened to call you into ICE or call you into ACS or is holding on to your documents? There's so many reasons, there's so many things that have to fall into place for someone to actually be able to successfully leave and stay gone. I think it's very easy for us out of our own concern to be like, why don't you just leave? And so the other helpful thing you could do is just know about resources. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to give your opinion. You don't have to tell them what you think. You can thank them for telling you, right? Because for some reason they trusted you enough to say something. You can listen. You can let them know that there is help out there and talk about what kind of help they feel comfortable with. It doesn't have to be from a government agency like that, like us. It could be from a hotline of a small nonprofit. And I think just believe them. I think that's the other thing too, is that there's like a stigma that people exaggerate or are making things up, when the fact of the matter is, like, the number of people coming into the Family Justice Center actually lying about the abuse is like nothing compared to the people who might have told someone and weren't believed, right? So it's not your job to figure out whether they're lying or not. Just connect them to services and listen.
Thank you, and that you actually answered my next question in terms of what we can do. So I'm gonna go on to my next question, which was, and you talked a little bit about this, what about people who are reluctant? And there's a lot of reasons why people will be reluctant to avail themselves of a lot of the services from the organizations in this room, from you all, from you, Officer McCall, and from you, Lieutenant Bailey, because you guys represent the man, right? You guys represent law enforcement. There's a lot of people who maybe don't feel comfortable, right? They want to help, but they don't feel comfortable going to the police.
Absolutely.
They don't feel comfortable going to public safety. They may not even be comfortable calling a hotline. Like, what can we do? And what's your experience with that?
Well, with the reluctancy of victims, I can understand, everybody, like you said, everybody's an individual. They have their thoughts on police, and that's their right, and I totally understand. Some people have had bad encounters, some people have had great encounters, and maybe they're reluctant to come to us because they're afraid that we might judge them, society might judge them, family might judge them, the neighbors are gonna look around when we respond to their house. I've had so many, victims, when I call them up for a follow-up, I'm like, hey, what's going on, how you doing, ma'am, sir, how's everything going? I was wondering if I can come by and visit. And they would, they were obvious victims of domestic violence, and they would just tell me not to come and visit them, So I'd be like, of course. So that's why they would be reluctant. But to help them with that process of getting that help and getting those resources, to let them know that it's okay. We're here for you. We're here for you. We're here to help you. You're not in this alone.
Senator Bailey, what about you? Because you're here on campus with all of these folks.
Well, yes, so I'm here all the time. My experience has been that a lot of individuals do come to me, thank goodness, and I'm able to give them referrals and assistance. In our department, what we try to do is, first, we actually control what people think about us. And that's, how we walk, how we talk, how we make people feel. So the first thing that we do is we learn how to be empathetic. The judgmental stuff, the stereotypes, they're out the door when you come to work and you put on a uniform. Whatever you believe in your personal life has nothing to do with work. So that's the first thing that we do. We all understand that we are individuals. We have mothers, brothers, sisters. It could be any one of us. So sensitivity. You can come to any officer. I don't care if they look like they had a bad day. You can come and speak to any officer. You can come to me. My door is always open. If it's not open, it's because someone's in there and I'm discussing something that shouldn't be heard. But my telephone number, you can take it down if you would like. If you have a pen, I suggest that you take it down. It's 2228. Our office is 2222. So if you go to the back, everything that we give to you guys has our numbers on it for a reason, because we want you to come to our office, we want you to call us. It's not snitching, we're not judgmental, we do not put your business out on the street. Everything that we do is to protect you. And if at any point in time you feel that that's not so, I want you to come to me personally. Okay? So guys, make sure that you see our table. Make sure that you come visit us, even if it's just to say hello. You know, if someone, a friend of yours, a relative is displaying some type of, irrational behavior or whatever it is you think that they have a problem, let us know. We'll go to them. So it's not just about you coming down to us. If you tell us that, well, my friend has science class or biology class upstairs in 4D, whatever, and I think she's having a situation. Okay, I'll just so happen to be walking there during that time, and I'll strike up a conversation. So what we want you to take away is that we are approachable. We are a confidential department, and you shouldn't feel any kind of way. You shouldn't feel embarrassed. Come talk to us. Come tell us what's going on. And we're here 24 hours a day. So there's no excuse.
And that actually is a really great point, Lieutenant Bailey, because here on campus, we do have several confidential offices here where you don't have to, you don't have to go to the police, you don't have to necessarily file a complaint, but if you need help or you need advice, you can go to Lieutenant Bailey, you can come to the Women's Center, you can go to the Counseling Center. There's a lot of resources that are here for you. A lot of times, some of our students or all of us, we might witness something. We're not involved, but we see something and it's clearly not right, right? But we're hesitant to step in and put ourselves potentially in harm's way. Can you talk about ways that we may safely intervene if we witness an incident of domestic violence?
So on campus, we have a confidential email that you can shoot an email. We're not gonna write you back. Only if you list your name and number, that's when we'll contact you if we have more questions. You can come down and speak to any officer or any officer that you see doing patrols in the buildings, on the street, in the parking lot. You can tell them, and if you don't want to give your name, you do not have to. We do not pressure you. We do not threaten you and shake you and say, yes, you have to tell us. No, we don't do that at all. If you see something, you can call us and just say, I witnessed this, and then hang up. And then we'll go into our investigation and take it from there. So there's different ways. We have a suggestion box that you can also write, I witnessed this, slip it in the box, and we'll do the investigation. So there's different ways that you can report something and it will not get connected or redirected back to you.
Well, yes, if you see something obviously in occurrence in front of you, I definitely recommend you call 911. Do not intervene, especially if it's a physical altercation. If it's getting a little loud, obviously, my recommendation is call the police. That's what we're here for. Last thing we need is, 2 victims. I don't want you guys to get yourselves hurt. That's what we're here for. Like you said, like she said, use the resources. We are a resource. We'll handle it. We don't want anybody, I don't want any of you guys to get hurt. That's my main concern. And from there, we'll investigate. Whether they left or not, at least it's on record. We'll do a report. We'll investigate and follow through. Just call 911.
Any other advice for anyone on panel about how to safely intervene if you see something happening in front of you?
I'm big on planning. That's my thing. Being very strategic about how we do things. I would never encourage someone to go and intervene because you're just going on the spur of the moment and reacting to something that you just saw. You don't have the background. You don't know what's going to happen after you intervene. You don't know if you're going to harm the situation or increase the amount of violence that person might experience after you leave. So my thing is that when you see something, right, it's not always about how you intervene, but how you react sometimes. And sometimes that can shift a dynamic. Also, like you said, like making sure that you always have resources on hand. Like, do you have a card in your pocket that you could just kind of like, after, circle back around and just be like, oh, I dropped that there for you, or like, like making sure that you're sharing resources with people. I think also like empathizing with people and like really having an open, like kind of like energy when you walk up to people, like that's important, but I would never say to like just go like
don't
never
be menacing, basically.
No. Make sure you have some type of like safety plan for yourself and for that person as well before you.
I just want to add, if any of you, we're talking a lot about like domestic violence situations, and I agree, it's very dangerous to intervene if there's like a physical altercation. So one thing that you could say to someone that you're worried about is just like, I'm worried about you. Like this is what it looked like to me, and I'm worried for your safety. And I think that just opens up a door, a very like non-judgmental door for us to talk about like what's going on with you. But I know we have wonderful partners here, Savi and the Alliance on Sexual Violence, and so I also want to talk about bystander interventions, like in nightlife, at a party, on the street, like catcalling and all that stuff. There are some really amazing organizations doing trainings around bystander interventions when it comes to sexual violence, right? So there's an organization called Outsmart, and all they do is train nightlife staff around how to intervene if you see a situation in a bar or a nightclub at a party and you want to help. And there's a lot of different trainings you can take. My office doesn't offer them, but if, for example, you're on the subway and you see someone being harassed and you feel comfortable doing so and you're with a group of people, you could pretend like you know that person, right? Like, hey, oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long, what time is it? Or, and just so that person's not alone. But again, these are sort of calculated risks, and I think that none of this should be done without training. And so all I want to say is that there's a lot of training out there if you search for it. Yeah.
Just to add to that, distraction is often creating a distraction is one of the strategies that we teach in bystander intervention as well, is just to, like you said, like you said earlier, just saying hello is also a little intimidating, but it's similar in concept, right? Like you can say, hey, I saw a friend, and just be loud across the street so that people, so that it sort of distracts the individuals from what's going on.
That's a good one. And actually, Savi will be here to teach a bystander intervention class. So we're very excited to offer that to you guys and talking about ways to safely intervene. I am going to, I've asked a lot of questions. I'm going to see if any of our audience members have any questions for the panel, or if there are any questions in our anonymous question box, which is at the front table over here. But at this point, if anyone has a question, we'll bring you the microphone, and we can get the panel to answer. I don't have my glasses on. Hold on. Any questions? Anyone have a question? Can someone check the box? Is there any questions in our box? No questions in the box? You guys, yes.
So,
Speak very loud.
okay, so with the sexting, right, isn't that, like, it's also like non-consensual pornography, right? But is that also like a defamation of character if they try to like expose you?
So the question was about sexting and non-consensual defamation.
Yeah.
Who wants to take that?
So what I would say is that in the court of law, or in the law's eyes, defamation and non-consensual pornography have different thresholds for proving them in court, right? And so the reason that we passed legislation for a non-consensual pornography law is because the actions that you could take under defamation of character were just not enough to sort of address the damage done by non-consensual pornography, right? So yeah, I think that there are elements of all of that, and I think that if somebody's experiencing that, they should connect to one of these partners or one of the family justice centers and get some legal advice on their particular case, because if somebody's information is up on a website but they haven't identified them, that might qualify under like the non-consensual pornography law, but maybe not defamation of character. If they put that stuff up there and they posted lies about you with your name and are identifying you, then that might be, you know, a violation of the non-consensual pornography law and defamation of character. So I think every case is different, but yes, I think it just depends on the different elements that are mixed in, and sort of how those have come together for that particular individual. And also the damage you can prove that it's having on your life, right? That's defamation of character. Like you have to kind of prove to the court how this has affected you negatively, whether it's preventing you from getting a job or stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. That's a good legal definition. A lot of times, I think what makes this difficult is that it is hard to prove, especially when it comes down to actual like courts, legal, even internal college investigations. If you could prove it, it wouldn't be so
It'd have to be
difficult.
clearly written out, like, I'm going to do this to ruin your life. Yeah. It has to be written out. It has to be written out.
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of other, yes. So the question I'm going to repeat is everybody in the room can hear. What are signs to look for? How would you be able to know that someone close to you is going through a domestic violence situation? Anyone can take that. Okay. Okay, and Diane?
Okay, so I'm just gonna say really simply, you're looking for someone whose options are getting less and less and their choices are getting fewer and fewer. If it looks like someone who you are really close with and you're not able to spend as much time with them as possible, or you notice they're spending a lot of time with whoever they're dating, but it doesn't seem like a healthy amount of time, but they're waiting outside of their classroom, they're at their locker, they're at their car, you're always eating meals together, it's almost like you never see them anymore. I would say that they don't have any breathing room, and inquire to them, like, hey, what are some things you used to like to do that maybe you're not allowed to do anymore? And I'm using the word allowed specifically because the message that they might be receiving is that they literally are not allowed to do this without their partner with them. So you're looking for someone whose options are getting fewer and fewer and the choices are getting smaller.
I just want to add, so basically what we talk about is a power and control dynamic, right? So if you notice that one person has all the power in the relationship and is exhibiting controlling behaviors like Kay described, that's essentially what you're looking for, and that's the reason.
Also, I'm gonna give you an answer that is probably not gonna like it, but sometimes you'll never know. So what I can suggest, always be in touch. Always have they'll see you. Hey, so how's your relationship going? Just be genuine.
Yes, question.
Alright, so I understand that 911 is one of the things that like helping and be out and shelter. But don't you think that a major reason why victims don't like to reach out is because the system is perfect, that they know that there's not a 100% chance they're gonna get out of the situation, or that like if they reach out and it fails, things would be worse for them, or it's just not gonna be successful or turn out the way that they wanted, and we just be like useless for them to do it.
So the question was about reaching out, people not wanting to reach out because the system is somewhat against them, and then they actually make the situation worse than it was before.
Well, not really against them, it's just like, they reach out, let's say you reach out to 911, but they're unable to help.
Right.
So like, that's what I'm asking.
Right.
Law enforcement can be a huge support, especially if you're in a dangerous situation or for whatever reason you want to report a crime. Like, for example, if you are interested in pursuing a visa as a result of being a victim of a crime, law enforcement has to be involved in that process, right? But if you are a victim of domestic violence, and I'm not, this is not to shame law enforcement in any way, like I said, they can be a very important piece of the puzzle for some people, but for other people, that might not be an option for them for a lot of reasons. Law enforcement is just one option victims and survivors have. All these service providers here today offer services that may not involve law enforcement ever, if that's what the victim or survivor wants. And I think that's the number one important thing to remember, is that when you are a victim of domestic violence or intimate partner violence, the power and control has been taken from you. When they make the decision, if and when they make the decision to get help, they should have the power and control to determine what services they want to avail themselves of, because they are the experts in their safety, right? What if their partner, what if their abusive partner is a police officer? And they're afraid, whether it's true or not, that if they make the call, that it won't be safe for them, that they'll be increasing the danger, or that they won't be believed, right? Or maybe somebody doesn't know about the local law, and that if they call police, that their immigration status doesn't matter. They may not know that. So I think that's a very real concern, and just to remind people that there's a lot of different ways they can go to connect to help. Law enforcement is just one of them. Unfortunately, though, none of us can do anything if they are in immediate danger in that moment. So.
Right.
I also just want to tell you that there are confidential helplines, that you don't have to reveal your name, number, nothing, and you can just run the situation by them. And you can call those helplines and sort of consider your options.
We have an anonymous question. Okay. If someone was involved in a domestic violence situation in the past, are they still welcome to seek help at these resources?
Absolutely.
Is there a statute of limitations?
No.
No. That means that no matter when something happened,
It doesn't matter.
they can still get help.
I've had cases from 1994. So it doesn't matter how old the incident was. Some people couldn't speak at that time. It wasn't the right time to do it. So they felt like right now was the time to actually report the incident and the crime. So we overcame that fear and they did. There is no time limit, not at all.
And when you're impacted, you're impacted. There is no time limit for how long you will be impacted. And sometimes I think people forget that once you've been impacted, sometimes you develop personality traits to kind of cope with that impact. So there's no time limit.
And the services we offer at the centers are also for long-term healing and well-being. So we offer crisis services, but we also have like transcendental meditation for survivors and their children to deal with trauma. We have yoga for survivors. There's literacy programs. So you can come in and say, like, I was in an abusive situation years ago, but I am still dealing with like the depression and the trauma, or even like the financial problems because my partner ruined my credit or whatever. We have programs. You don't have to be in crisis in that relationship now. You can walk in and get a whole bunch of different services because, you know, the ripple effects of abuse can last decades.
We're gonna wrap it up. Oh, no, we have a question. Okay, we're gonna have our last question and then we're gonna wrap it up because the students have class at 2 o'clock. Yes, ma'am.
So organizations like they didn't want to go to like law enforcement or a resource because they were being impacted by the domestic abuse relationship, but they weren't the person that was in the relationship, so they didn't want to go because they didn't know what the consequences would be for the person.
Okay, so someone who's not exactly in the relationship, where the domestic violence is occurring, but they're impacted by it. Vicarious trauma is what you're talking about. Okay, anyone want to talk about vicarious trauma?
So I talk a lot about secondary survivors because at VAL we have a lot of child witnesses. So sometimes as a child witness you'll experience violence between your parents, but you yourself are not experiencing the violence, but you're experiencing, like you said, like being a secondhand survivor or vicarious trauma. Like the things that you experience as a person who loves and cares for both these people, but you're also experiencing the trauma that comes with violence. I think it's very important that you seek therapy after, especially if you're a child witness, to seek therapy so that you don't normalize that type of behavior. I'm just only talking about being a child witness because that's from the perspective that I can speak from. I think it's important to seek out therapy to figure out how you can handle that type of trauma, that vicarious trauma, and how you can kind of, you know, oftentimes if we feel like we can't solve something, we feel like we're the ones to blame, and to really disconnect ourselves from blaming ourselves for things that happen that were out of our control. So that's kind of what it is.
I also just quickly want to follow up on the fact that we these are confidential places where you can get counseling. There are two reasons why we would break confidentiality. One is if you're in immediate danger, or the person is in immediate danger, or you're about to hurt somebody. Those are the and we usually give warning, like don't tell me anything where I might have to make a report, right? So we will let you know beforehand if we have to break confidentiality, what that, you know, so we work around that if we don't think that's in the best interest of the person that you're about to help.
But absolutely, the person who's experiencing vicarious trauma, you don't have to have been the person in the relationship in order to have been affected or in order to get services from these and all of the organizations that are here. So that's a really important question. Thank you for asking that. We're going to have you as our last question, then we're going to wrap up. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So we're talking about any type of delayed reaction to any type of trauma, rape, sexual assault, domestic violence. Anyone want to take that?
I think it's important to remember that there's often shame and guilt involved, and people are just dealing with things in their own way and take their own time. And I think it's not fair to judge anybody who takes that long. Just remembering and reminding people that you know the individual must have been dealing with their own emotions before they could come forward and share it, and try to make sense of it, essentially, right? Because often you don't even know what might have happened to you, especially if you were a young child, or if something happened without consent, where you felt, you know, especially because there's a grooming process as well with sexual violence, especially where they feel where they make you their favorite kid or whatever it might be, and bribe you with things. And you may have thought that you did this willingly, and it takes you years to understand what happened. And so it takes years for that to come out and for you to be able to address it. And so just reminding people that there's a lot that goes, the bravery and the courage that it takes to bring this up is incredible.
And sometimes people will say, oh, well, since it took that long, it must be a lie. Because if it were true, you would have said something immediately, right? And that's not an enlightened perspective, because as Sarah pointed out, there's a lot of shame and guilt associated. There's a lot of reasons why people might not say anything. As Lieutenant Bailey said, you may never know what someone's going through, right? Or you may take you years to find out. So I think, to Sarah's point, the best thing to do is to be empathetic. And at the point when someone is ready to say something and to get help, that's when you as a friend, a family member, an empathetic human being say, okay, you're ready to get help now, and I'm here to help you. Yes,
And
that will be
also,
our last comment.
everybody can hear me, right? 'Cause I'm pretty loud. Okay, so I also had a comment. Your brain has a defense mechanism. So sometimes when you are experiencing a traumatic event, you can't recall it. So it'll come in snippets. So that's sometimes why it takes time for people to come forth, because they can only remember snippets of an event versus the whole thing from beginning to end. So if you're going to be relaying that information to an officer, and the officer's going to want to take a report, they're going to want the beginning to end, but you can't remember everything. So that's one of the reasons why sometimes there's a delay.
Yes.
Also, a lot of victims don't want to relive that encounter. They don't.
Right, because it was
It's traumatic. They don't want to relive it.
But I think now with the rise of trauma-informed services and training and issues, that it's getting a little bit better. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone. Please give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you all for being here. We have some little parting gifts for you, and to thank you for coming to York College. We really appreciate you. We want to thank all of the people who have come to the event. Please know that in addition to the services here, there's resources on campus, Lieutenant Bailey, the Women's Center, the Men's Center, counseling. There's a lot of help here for you. Please go around to the tables who are here. There's still information and our sheets available for you. Thank you for coming to our third annual Domestic Violence Health Fairs Gala.